Hey, what's going on, guys? So this is a video that is a somewhat of an apology slash experimental video toward the H3H3, fan base and subreddit, because I initially made a video on Steve Will Do It's actions and how many people, including Ethan Klein or H3 from the H3 podcast, are objecting to his actions while simultaneously supporting things that I deem may be hypocritical for them to support while objecting to Steve, or inconsistent with their objection to Steve. And I put this link in their Reddit, in their subreddit. And, Reddit is an overall very toxic place. And, I would argue in some sense more toxic than Twitter because, if you put something in someone else's subreddit that is maybe in some way against that person, you're gonna struggle because your stuff can just get downvoted to the point where no one's gonna be able to see it. I saw somebody said something like, "This video is stupid and ignorant." And I simply just asked for them to elaborate. And then just me asking for them to elaborate gets downvoted into like oblivion and no one gets to see it. And many of them did not like my approach. They were saying things like, "This is why vegans are annoying," and blah, blah, blah. Now, let me just make it clear from the get-go that I am not one of those people who think that there is a one-size-fits-all kind of way to convince people to do things. There's some people that think that Vegan Gains' approach of yelling at them years ago was what they needed to go vegan, and that if someone was so much nicer to them, like Earthling Ed, that they would not have gone vegan. So for sure, different approaches work for different people. And possibly the H3 subreddit would rather me take a more nice approach when trying to point out these things to Ethan Klein. So genuinely, this is an experiment to see, because many vegans think that people who say these things, like the H3 subreddit, like, this is not the way, would just prefer that you stay silent. And of course, that's not going to be ideal for the victims. Of course, if you were a victim of, forced sexual exploitation as an animal, you wouldn't want your people speaking up for you to just go silent all of a sudden. So let's see if there's a middle ground, and let's see if I can just nicely convey the points I was trying to make in that first video. And for my audience, you may be thinking this is pointless and that it won't really do anything. And you might be right. I mean, we're seeing right now, this is the experiment to see if I'm just nicer about it, if they'll hear me out and what I'm trying to say. So let's just go on with it and see what the outcome is. So to H3H3's fans, just know that I'm a huge fan of the H3 podcast. I watch it a lot, quite religiously. I'm very well aware of all the inside jokes and the sound bites, and I'm just overall a huge fan. But I took some issue with Ethan and much of the crew objecting to what Steve Will Do It was doing with his dog, while simultaneously purchasing products which support the things that Steve Will Do It does to his dog, such as jerking off animals. Now, let's be clear, right? Many of you were saying that, well, you can't really compare the two things because in one case, Steve Will Do It is just doing it for fun, while in the case of buying animal products, we're doing it for the purpose of producing something useful. So that was the main criticism I was seeing. Now, I addressed this already in the previous video, but perhaps people just didn't watch to that point because people were triggered and they didn't get there. So let me just say that I acknowledge that there is a clear difference between jerking off an animal for fun, like Steve Will Do It is doing, and then jerking off an animal for food production. Clearly, there's a difference. Or, even jerking off an animal to produce animals for selling as pets or something like that. So here comes my question, acknowledging this clear difference in the two actions. If Steve Will Do It was, say, an expert or whatever, and he had the credentials to jerk off dogs, and he said, "I was jerking off dogs for the purpose of extracting their semen and injecting that semen into a female dog in order to make the female dog pregnant so that the female dog can lactate, and then I can steal her milk for cheese and for pizza and for yogurt, etc., but derived from dogs, of course," would you consider that moral? I want you to keep in mind what I'm doing here. I'm acknowledging that there is a clear difference between jerking off an animal to produce milk versus jerking off an animal for fun. Now I'm asking you, if we were to do this to dogs for milk, in order to produce something, because that was the difference many people named, would it be ethical to do so? And just remember, this is all done without consent. Now, if you still think that it's moral and you think that it's ethical to grab dogs and forcibly jerk them off, extract their semen, and then forcibly impregnate a female dog in order to get them to lactate, to produce milk, to produce dog pizza, dog cheese pizza, okay, you're consistent. But let's take this a little farther now. Would we consider this ethical in the case of human beings? Now, I know you may be thinking, wait, Danny, we have a difference now. Jerking off a dog and jerking off a human for milk are two different things, because in one case it's a dog and in one case it's a human, or in one case it's a non-human, in one case it's a human. I hear you out fully. So let's be clear. It's ethical in your view to forcibly sexually exploit a dog for cheese and for milk, etc. but not in the case of humans. So presumably there is a morally relevant difference between dogs and humans such that it is ethical to forcibly sexually exploit a dog, but not a human. So we have to ask now, what is that difference? Some people may say something like, well, dogs and humans are of different intelligence. And usually what people mean when they say this is like, dogs can't really reason like humans can, but humans can reason. But this isn't a property that is intrinsic to humans. There's certain humans who have such severe mental handicaps that they actually show no greater degree of intelligence than a dog. Does this mean that it's ethical to forcibly sexually exploit particular humans who have mental disabilities, which again indicate no greater degree of intelligence than a dog? If you're at this point in the video and you still are saying, yeah, it's ethical, then okay, you're consistent and you, in my view, weirdly think that it's ethical to forcibly sexually exploit human beings who are mentally handicapped to the point of showing no greater degree of intelligence than a dog or a cow, etc. Now, if you do take issue with doing this to humans, then you are in a contradiction, right? Because I asked you why it was ethical to do it to humans, but not dogs. You gave me a reason. I applied that reason to humans, and now you have a problem with it, which indicates that you actually don't think that that's the reason that justifies the mistreatment. Because in the case where we take away that reason or apply the reason, you still have the attitude that it's wrong. What I want you to realize is that the trait in the human that makes you still object to the human being forcibly sexually exploited for milk also exists in dogs and in cows. And that trait is sentience, having a will to live, being able to experience the world. And therefore, you should object to all accounts of forcibly jerking off animals and forcibly artificially inseminating animals for milk production or cheese. So bringing this back to Ethan now, if I were to walk him through this line of questioning, I do wonder if he would find it ethical to forcibly jerk off dogs and forcibly artificially inseminate female dogs to generate dog milk for dog cheese. And I highly doubt that Ethan would think it's ethical to forcibly artificially inseminate disabled humans or jerk off handicapped humans. Obviously, this is just disgusting. And if Ethan couldn't name a morally relevant difference between these scenarios, then he should object to the consumption of things like dairy in the same way that he objects to what Steve will do it has done to his dogs. And this applies to you too, not just Ethan, whoever has these kinds of positions. So that's my main point here. And that would lead me to believe that Ethan would be a moral hypocrite, and as would you be. And I'm not saying this to just be morally superior and like blah, blah. I'm just saying like that's the facts of the matter. And a lot of times letting people know that they're acting in a hypocritical manner can help them change. And in this case, you'd be changing a habit which helps animals because you're no longer financially supporting the forced sexual exploitation of animals for cheese. All right, guys, so that is the end of the video. Hope you enjoyed. Let's see what this does. I have a feeling it really won't do much, but I think it is an interesting experiment because we always are met with this whole criticism of like, you're not being nice enough or you're not, saying things the right way. So with all the nuance covered in this video and, me at least trying to come across as nicer, let's see what happens. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy my work and want to support me on Patreon, the link to that will be in the pinned comment. You can get early access to content and more perks. And if you don't know, I do have a book going over all, if not most, of the anti-vegan arguments you're going to hear online. If you want that as well, it'll be in the pinned comment. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Dude.
Fuck off, I don't want anything to do with you. Don't ever speak to me again. You're a fucking piece of shit.
Even vegans don't get your weird, stupid wannabe sense of irony here. Who is your audience? Nobody gets these dumb jokes. Dude,